And welcome back to the Northland Sports Page, hour number 2. Guys, all of a sudden getting gold medal Olympians has become almost a regular thing for us. It's Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook, Topher Davis. We've had John Schuster times 2. Now we're honored to have Tyler George times 2. Welcome, sir. How you doing? How's the COVID era treating you?
Just trying to stay busy, Brian. Sometimes it's easier than others, but as I told you before, closing on a house on Thursday, so I'm sure I'm going to have plenty to do pretty quick, and I'll be ruining the day I ask for more things to do.
Well, and that's the thing because our previous guest, Jen Walter, said, one of the silver linings is at least we're afforded more time to do other things that we wouldn't normally do because our calendars, our schedules wouldn't allow it. Are you embracing that time? Because with a new house, you're going to have to.
Yeah, up until that point, kind of been trying to get my butt back in shape too. The post Olympic lull kind of puts you in that mindset where it's and retirement lull, I should say, for me, where you just kind of do whatever you want to do for a while, and it's like you're putting rocket fuel into your body for a few months, and then something like this happens, and it's really easy just to sit around and do nothing. But it's helped me get things back in gear, and there's been a lot of boring days, but I help out at the family shop a little bit up at the liquor store just to stay occupied. And yeah, now with the house coming around, it's going to be busy times again, I think. But from what I've heard, this is my first homeowner situation, but I'm excited for it.
Absolutely. So touch on that a little bit because judge me accordingly, but thank goodness liquor stores are essential in my world. And, say what you want about that statement, but you are part of an essential business. What has that been like and how booming has business been maybe as a result?
Numbers have ticked up a little bit. It's nothing dramatic. Like the first couple of weeks after things really got crazy and businesses were shutting down, right after the bars closed down was when things really popped up. But it's not a lot of traffic still. It's just people buying more, so they're not going out as often. But yeah, the numbers are definitely up during the week because there isn't such a thing as weekends for people for a lot of these situations. But the weekend numbers are relatively similar, and then the weekdays have ticked up quite a bit. Mostly it's people coming during the day, too. For some reason, I'm not sure what it is, but people don't really want to be out at night during this situation. Not that it's any different at night than it is during the day. I would think that it'd actually be safer to be out during the night because nobody's doing anything. But it's a lot more daytime business, and the weekends will stay steady. I think there's going to be a pretty good uptick when the weather turns, too. Cookout and obviously fishing opener last weekend. So that's both good for business and a slight concern for public safety that I think there's going to be this boom of people outdoors grilling and hanging out with people as the things start to open up just because they're so cooped up at home.
Absolutely. With the new house, I want to consider an open invite for me. I've got one more question I want to make sure I get to, and I know the other guys want to jump in. But you've got a specific liqueur that you are selling with proceeds going towards House of Hearts because that was one of the things,
Yeah.
one of the many sports events that got erased, if you will, by COVID. Talk about that. Now people can contribute to that because not being able to participate, donate, that hurts, but there are other ways to do it.
Yeah, I came prepared for this actually. So this is liquor out of Chicago. It's called Jeppson's Malort Liqueur. If you've ever had it, it's a very distinct flavor. I don't want to put a name to the flavor because it's always fun to see what people think it tastes like without any prompting the first time they have it. But it's very unique. This particular bottle isn't one of the fundraiser ones, but when we do have that, it's going to have a gold medal logo on the top of the bottle here on the back. It'll have something about the House of Hearts, which is our charity that supports Project Joy. The Plies family started that years back. Patrick Plies, that helps combat childhood hunger in the Northland region. So we're going to be distributing it to a couple of different causes. The money that we do raise through these sales, you can order it online. It won't be in any liquor stores locally because it's produced in Chicago, and their particular liquor isn't allowed to be sold, I think, in Minnesota. But it can be shipped here. So if you go onto the Liquor Barn's website, you can order these special gold medal edition bottles. $5 from every sale is going to go to help feed hungry kids. And in this time of need, that's really important because we don't have the normal event that we do. And we've done some ancillary things that have raised a decent amount of money. But it's very difficult to get even close to the numbers that we normally would. And until we know if we can have that event at some point in the future, we don't know yet. Nobody knows anything right now. We're just kind of taking it as it goes. But this is a cool way to help still support the cause. with something that's been a part of the curling community for a long time. And the good people at Jeppson's Malort and the CH Distillery out of Chicago were totally on board with being a part of this. Really good people. So it's been a lot of fun to do this. Yeah.
All right, I'm hogging my friend Tyler George. Dave, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask another liquor store question. I was going to
Yeah.
ask if any inventory is turning faster than you guys expected. Any surprises? Anything that you're like, wow, I thought that would be selling more?
The biggest surprise is it's not a particular product as much as higher end things are selling more, which we thought would be the opposite. We thought people would be cutting budget right now and buying the lower end things. But I think people, just because they're not able to go out, they want to treat themselves to something. So we're selling more of the expensive products, which obviously is great. But I think just people want to sit at home and have something nice in these strange times. And if you're going to load up too, obviously you're going to want to have a decent amount for every trip that you go out. So the amount that people buy is not surprising, but the quality of the things that they're purchasing right now is a bit of a surprise.
Boy, I wonder if that has something to do with what Jen was saying and having additional time. If we got this time, let's do something we haven't done before. So let's buy, Johnny Walker Black because we've never been able to do that before.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good point. I'm sure there's a lot of different motivations for it. But yeah, when you're sitting at home as opposed to going out to the bar, maybe home is where you'd normally have just a beer or your standard cocktail, and then the bar would be where you have your martini or your Manhattan or something like that. And maybe people are treating their home more like a bar setting and having nicer drinks. That's also a possibility.
Yes, it's not as hypothetical as you might think. You hit on a lot of things that I've been doing during COVID-19.
Brian's nodding. Yep.
Yes,
Yep, okay.
you can't see who's not talking the way this works, but I'm nodding with everything Tyler's saying. And even better is Dave asked the question, and we have no idea what's in his thermos, but he tilted back as you were answering. So there's a lot of, again, I like,
for some reason.
Exactly. I like to say radio's not a visual medium, and this truly isn't either in the 100% capacity, but that was great. Topher, go ahead.
Well, I want to know a little bit. The Jeppson's Malort thing's pretty awesome that you're working with them to do a fundraiser for House of Hearts. Obviously, that's a really big deal, and we'll make sure to put the link to the webpage in the comments for this video when it goes on YouTube as well to help support that. So make sure to get that information to us so we can make sure you get that all right too. But I want to know a little bit that drink in particular. How is it best recommended maybe drink it? You do it over ice? You want to do it straight? You want to mix it with something? What's the best way to take that drink down?
The vast majority of the time, people drink it straight. It's not really a cocktail type beverage. It's just it's a very unique shooter. It's known or there's a particular drink in Chicago. It's a combo that they call a Chicago handshake, where it's an old style and a shot of Malort. So because they're both very distinctly Chicagoan things. Like if you go to Wrigley Field, you can get an old style pretty much any bar you go to. Even around the stadium. So if you go into a Chicago bar and you ask for a Chicago handshake, then you're going to get that shot of Malort and that old style. With this particular liquor, it's not something that would mix very well with other things. And there are some martinis out there that use it. And there are some like grapefruit themed cocktails that you can do. That mix works a little bit. But generally, it's just kind of drank straight, and then there's a very interesting reaction to it too. And I should also add to with the bottle, because of the unique label, it's going to be a limited thing. So it'll be a collectible for people as well, which obviously is really cool for us. Something that commemorates our victory in South Korea. So a lot of curling clubs are buying them just to put up on their mantle or anything in the trophy case, and people for their home collections too. And I think there's going to be a special super limited one that we do with a barrel aged version of it, but that's going to be something down the road when we see how the sales for this go too. But yeah, I encourage anybody to pick it up, even if you don't drink it, just to have it in the old case. It's a cool looking bottle. I'm going to definitely keep a bunch for myself, obviously, with the gold medal logo being on there, and the medal itself the logo is a replica of the actual gold medal from Pyeongchang too. So it's very distinctive. It's really cool, besides obviously being for a great cause. Thanks for letting me bring that up too, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, no question. Ty, I don't know, but there's two things that you did with that answer that were great that maybe you didn't even plan on. Even in the COVID-19 era, at least we now know a Chicago handshake is a handshake we can still perform. I'm in, right?
That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
And then the other thing is we're sports guys, but have you noticed the Pandora's box that you opened when you got us talking a little bit about booze? All of a sudden the questions, maybe not so much Dave, but Topher and I are like, oh goodness, hold on, I got this question, I got this question, I got this question. You've humanized us a bit, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I think that's a subject that a lot of people have become more familiar with over the last couple months. I think, they do those memes online where they say your first name is your first pet's name, your last name is the street you grew up on. So somebody sent me one the other day that said your quarantine alcoholic name is your first name followed by your last name, and that's about as accurate as it gets right now.
Yeah, there's some frightening truth to that.
Yeah.
Now, this show is a little bit guilty at times of sticking to the four major sports, but let's talk about your sport or your former sport, as you do mention the retirement piece. Curling community was one of those immediately impacted by COVID with what happened to Sarah and John Schuster. Talk about social distancing even going to be possible with this sport?
It's pretty difficult. The competition itself, I mean, athletes be, especially when they're sweeping, they're going to be very close to each other. You could combat that by having just one sweeper all the time, which definitely you could still have the competition doing that, no question. The tougher part of it, even way more so than the competition itself, is the social aspect, because curling is such a tight knit community, and it's totally commonplace for competitors, opponents, to sit with each other after the game, for league nights especially, have a drink or something like that. At the higher competitive levels, it'd be relatively easy to curb it, I think. But yeah, the curling clubs themselves are kind of tight quarters. So you look at places or like baseball stadiums, football stadiums. If you don't have fans in there and you're still having the teams competing, you can keep a pretty good distance because it's such a wide open space. With a curling club, unless it's one of the very few events that are held in an arena, you've been in curling clubs before. The Duluth Club is a pretty big club, and most curling clubs are not that way. And even there, the quarters would be pretty tight for any kind of major competition. But imagine that being about the quarter of the size that the Duluth Club is, and that's what a lot of these clubs are, maybe half the size too. So if you're sticking multiple teams, if you got a 32-team tournament, you're trying to fit them all into a curling facility. I'm not sure how you could actually make that work. And a lot of events have already canceled for the upcoming season. I know some of the Canadian tournaments in September have already been canceled that far down the road. So it's tough to say where it's going to go. And of course it'll be missed, but with anything else in these times, as much as it's difficult to deal with it, you have to think about the greater good and how much worse it would be if we got over anxious and restarted, which, not to, get on that subject or whatever, but I mean, with everything happening in Wisconsin over the last few days, and the being a border town, that's certainly a concern for us. And with the curling community, that's something that we could that could be a big problem, and it's certainly not something that we wanted or we would want to be connected to our sport if we had events that we shouldn't be holding, which is why we ended up postponing House of Hearts as much as we wanted to do it. The worst thing that could happen, we actually hold the event even in a smaller degree, is somebody brings something in from somewhere else in the country, and then it spreads in Duluth, and then that charity tournament then is connected with that particular mishap for the rest of the time. That's only going to hurt the event, and that's not something you want for a charity event. So that for curling as a whole, it's I would be very hesitant to have any kind of tournament at this point. And league play in Duluth even, I think, would be the same thing. But we just got to cross our fingers that things take a turn over the next few months. But we're listening to the experts the best we can. And when we can curl again, when we feel like it's safe to do it, I think people will be relatively smart about how we handle something like that. At least you'd hope. But yeah, I mean, it's again, with this tight knit group, there's definitely a concern that things could take a turn badly in a hurry with that.
Well, I'm interested, Tyler, in knowing what were you doing up until this came around. Like, I know you've been traveling to different curling clubs and working with different various places, trying to grow the game of curling as well. What was it like in the beginning of March? What were you doing when all of a sudden all this COVID-19 really started coming to a head?
It was kind of business as usual for me at that point. I was still traveling a ton. It's become pretty much a full-time job for me, traveling around the country, making appearances, promoting the sport, doing clinics, a lot of speaking engagements, and a lot of freelance things in that regard too that aren't necessarily connected to USA Curling. So I was surprised that this far down the road from the Olympics that the interest and passion for the sport would be as high as it still is. And the amount of asks that I've gotten from curling clubs and the appearances that I've been making in that regard really haven't slowed. And that's a great sign for our sport moving forward. Obviously, with this road bump here, it's unfortunate that it happened when it did, because this is the time when it starts to turn from the momentum from the last games into the momentum towards the next games. So getting to 2020, we're starting to think about 2022 pretty seriously already. And the fact that we're 2 years down the road and people are still as excited and interested in the sport as they were in 2018 after we won is a fantastic sign for curling moving forward. So ideally, when we can get this thing up and running again, I'll be back on the road and helping pave that road to the 2022 games so that people are excited about the sport when it rolls around. And whether it's my old squad or somebody else that's our representative at the next Olympics, then they'll have a lot of support going in and a lot of interest, and something we'll be more prepared for now with all the exposure that we've gotten over the last couple of years, and really expanding that into the next games. We always hoped that we could do something that would bring it to a more mainstream level in our country, and we've definitely seen that over the last 2 years. So the fact that we are where we are now compared to where we were 2-3 years ago is remarkable. And I've said this 1,000 times, that I'm really glad that we didn't know exactly how big it would be and how important it would be for our sport before we played that gold medal game. We knew it was big, but we didn't know exactly how much it would mean for the sport if we won that game. So being blissfully ignorant is a good thing as an athlete in major competitions, I think.
Obviously, you are an athlete. Olympic gold medalist Tyler George is with us, but you're a sports guy. You're a sports fan. What about as a fan? What are you missing right now? Are you missing hockey because it would be the playoffs? Are you missing NBA playoffs because Golden State for once actually wouldn't be there and we'd have to look at it differently? Are you missing, we're not missing the NFL because they're still playing. We're all missing baseball. Your first pitch from a couple years back, Topher and I were there. It's infamous. You had incredible experiences with all those teams. What are you missing as a sports guy?
This time of year, it's hard not to miss, as you said, the NHL playoffs. I think that's probably my top 2-3 sporting events in any sport. But the everyday Twins games, just having baseball there all the time, especially with as exciting a squad as they have right now, and Donaldson coming in and everybody being jacked up about that, and Kenta Maeda. I mean, with the new additions, it's not something that we're used to having as a fan of the team. So, I think everybody was really, really excited for that team coming back, but also getting better. We've lamented so many times about how they don't take good teams and make them great. And they didn't get their number one starter that they were looking for, but they certainly added a lot of pieces that make the team better. And there's no question they're a better team this year than last year. So that's what I miss the most right now is, under any circumstance, not having baseball on a daily basis, but really not having this particular team to watch, day in, day out is really disappointing as a Minnesota sports fan.
So to piggyback off of that, and if I'm wrong, it'll be one of my most embarrassing media moments, but we've been stuck watching classic games. And one of those classics that's aired again and again and again is Game 163 against Detroit. Mm-hmm. Unless I'm completely wrong, you were there, correct?
I
Take
was
me
there.
through that. You and Robbie Hollenhorst were there, right?
Yeah, we were up in the top level of the stadium and the left field corner, kind of like straight up from the foul pole. And it was probably the third greatest game I've ever been to with regard to the atmosphere in there, because I went to games 3 and 4 of the division series in 2002. So it was the first playoff games that they had there in a decade. And it was following the year they were almost contracted. So people were really, really excited about just having baseball and then having playoff baseball again. That's the loudest I've ever heard any stadium in my life. That was incredible. There was standing ovations for every 2-ball count, screaming and cheering. And the Oakland players they couldn't communicate with each other, and they were losing balls in the roof and crashing into each other because of the noise. So the fans realized, like in the second inning of the game, that they were actually impacting what was happening, and it got that much louder yet. So it was one of those things that just being there was it was a life experience. But yeah, 163 was the day after. No, that was my birthday. Was
Oh, wow.
163.
And it was the day after the Vikes beat the
It
Packers
was
on
the
Monday night
day
because I
after.
was there.
Yep,
Yeah.
Favre's debut against the Packers. I remember my birthday party being that night. Well, I remember most of it. I don't really remember.
You remember being told you had a birthday party that night, right?
I remember having a half of a party. Yeah, that was one of those that got away from us a little bit. But it was an occasion, Favre's first game against Green Bay was, I mean, that's one of the greatest moments you can have as a Vikings fan. You have to feel like you're selling your soul for a couple minutes, and then you just throw yourself into it. And I think that was probably my favorite year as a Vikings fan, just because it was so much fun to watch. But yeah, that back to back with that game and then game 163. I mean, what a 24 hours as a Minnesota sports fan too.
No doubt about it. I'm going to piggyback off that, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys again because, again, I'm hogging my friend, U.S. gold medalist Tyler George is here with us. Talk to me a little bit about just basically the experiences that you guys had after you won, because Topher and I saw the first pitch. You got to be part of a puck drop at the X. All these different things. Do you have a favorite? I mean, they all had to be kind of, can you believe we're doing all this? But is there one that you go, that was truly incredible?
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, it was so strange at the time because if any one of these things had happened at any point in our lives, it'd be something we'd never forget, but you don't get any time to reflect on it. You just have to go on to the next thing. That first week after the Olympics was absolute insanity. It was all in New York too. So, you kind of feel like a fish out of water for a little bit. And the way everybody's treating you, even out there, we knew it'd be big in Minnesota. We didn't know that people really cared that much outside of that area, but I mean, we were getting recognized on the streets in New York City. So it was bizarre. Like, it's a part of a reality TV show that it's a joke and everybody's in on it and you don't know what's going on. But the two that stand out the most to me from that particular time were when we did the puck drop for the Winter Classic in Annapolis at the Naval Base for the Maple Leafs and Capitals game. And we had 35,000 people under the lights at night chanting USA at us while we're delivering the puck to center ice on a curling stone, which is a hell of a lot harder than you think it is, because that is not curling ice. You got to chuck the hell out of that stone to get it to center ice. And Schuster somehow, after like one or two practices before the game, was able to throw it pretty much perfectly. We only cheated a little bit on it, but you can barely tell. But that particular experience was that much better because we got to meet so many people that were a part of the Naval Academy and the Navy itself, and the people that defend our country and are, these are the real heroes and everything, and them telling us how much they appreciated what we did, not just because we won, but because we handled ourselves well and because we represented the country well. And you get a deeper appreciation for what wearing USA on your back means when you do something like that and people take notice of it. So, the people that are that care enough about our country, that love it so much that they're willing to die for it, defend it, for them to tell you that they appreciate what you did because you wore USA. It doesn't matter that you're chucking big rocks at giant circles. They don't care. You're still representing them. And we didn't really have a sense of that until after the games. You just look at it as a game, and then it's something totally bigger than that when you're on the world stage and you represent the country. So that was it was a cool moment. And then it was a great realization afterwards too. And the other one I really enjoyed was we went to a Broadway play, and I believe it's called the Play That Goes Wrong. And it's a farce. Like it's a murder mystery, but the set's falling apart. They're forgetting their lines. People are falling all over the place. But that's what's supposed to happen.
It's kind of like this show, really, but go ahead.
Yeah, but it's intentional, Brian. Yeah. So yeah, we for 1 minute got to watch somebody else perform their craft and not be the center of attention, except for the first act. They actually had Matt Hamilton and I as a part of it. And when we took our seats before the show started, they introduced us and got a huge ovation from the crowd there too. And somebody next to us said, Stephen Colbert was here a couple of weeks ago, and that ovation was twice as loud as what he got. So, then again, you're starting to realize how much this stuff means to other people. But that particular one wasn't that it was awe-inspiring or anything like that. It was just really cool to sit in the middle of everything that we were doing and watch somebody else perform their craft and get to relax for a couple hours. And then we got to go out with the cast from the show afterwards, and we had taped Jimmy Fallon the night before. So we got to sit in a bar drinking with this cast of the Broadway performance and watch ourselves on Jimmy Fallon with them at the same time. And if there's a more surreal moment in your life than that, I don't know what it is. It was really, really bizarre, but so cool. One of those that you look around and say, is this really happening right now? And that was kind of how we felt for a couple of months, basically. But yeah, it's so hard to pick with so many of the things we got to do. I think we'd have a greater appreciation for it if it was more spread out. But looking back on it now, especially when we have all this time on our hands, it's really cool to think about all those experiences individually, as opposed to just a crazy couple weeks, crazy couple months, and really appreciate each of them for what they are.
No, that's a great answer. I feel like Dave feels the same way when he watches this back on YouTube. It's pretty surreal for him. Topher, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering a little bit, Tyler. I know you're a huge sports fan, and obviously we've all got more time with no sports going on. But one place that is sports going on, and we know Brian's feelings on this, but South Korea's got their baseball games now being televised. Is it different for you having been there and having that connection to South Korea, or is it something you're not really interested in?
I'm interested in anything sports-wise right now. Obviously, the game times are similar to what we had when we were competing over there, so it's tough for people to watch over here. But I love the pageantry of their game over there. Like, I don't know why it's different there than it is here. Like, I hate the bat flips and showing up pitchers, maybe because I was a pitcher, and like just making yourself bigger than the game when it's Major League Baseball. But the Korean guys like making an art form out of it and flipping bats 30 feet in the air and posing on, balls that are 50 feet foul or whatever. Like it's super entertaining. I love it for that particular league. And I don't want any part of it here in Major League Baseball. I don't know what it is, but it's not really that we have much of a connection to it still, though, because people ask us a lot about what we liked about South Korea and how much we enjoyed being over there. And the people are fantastic and really hospitable. I enjoyed my time there, but we really didn't see very much of the country. We were competing for 14 days basically, and all of your time is spent either eating, sleeping, training, practicing, or playing games. We only got to see 2 other sports during the Olympics the entire time we were there, so we didn't. If we weren't doing that, we definitely weren't touring around seeing more of the countryside or whatever, as opposed to the luge or bobsledders that are done in a couple of minutes, and then they have the rest of the time just to enjoy the Olympics. That's not the way it goes with our particular sport. So there isn't a lot of connection to the country or what goes on over there because of our experiences, simply because we just didn't have time for it. But I really enjoy the vibe from the South Korean Baseball League. That's the KBO, I believe it's called. It's a hell of a lot of fun to watch. I just wish the games were at better times to watch it.
So Tyler, I'm going to take you back for just a second, because I'm wondering how a sports guy who obviously the Olympics and all the adulation, I would think you'd kind of understand that from the sports fan, but being at a Broadway play, you had to have figured, okay, some of these guys are going to know us, but I mean, is this our people? And then have the whole place break out in applause. That had to be a different, almost surreal environment as well.
Yeah, it was kind of a microcosm for how things were as a whole, that every time something like that would happen, it still felt like a surprise. It wasn't like a couple days in, it's like, okay, yeah, we're used to that now. That's just how it's going to be. Every single event that we did, we always would go in, and I think this comes from partially that our sport is not as mainstream as a lot of Olympic sports are kind of that way as a whole. But the fact that this happened to us later on in life too, being in your 30s for a couple of us and having experience like that, I think you're more settled into who you are, and you don't take yourself very seriously at all. I think that's a general way that curlers are too. I don't think it's necessarily just us, and it's definitely a Midwestern thing too. But, we're not guys outside of, Matt Hamilton that try to draw attention to themselves all
Oh,
the
he's a
time.
Packer fan. Are you surprised? That's what they're about.
You need a guy like that on your team. Somebody's got to be the goofy one that lightens things up. That was Matt's role for sure. But so I say it endearingly all the time. But yeah, even we get farther down the road, and we went to the Memorial Tournament in Ohio, Jack Nicklaus's tournament, excuse me, and we got to go to Jack's private party at the clubhouse on Friday night, and we were guests of honor. And the first thing they did when everybody was in there was introduce us. And the bartender was like, "You guys are more famous than Jack in here tonight." And we got to meet Jack and hang out for a bit, which is a cool story in itself. I should probably tell you guys that one. But it would happen that way all the time, where you just look around and you're confused as to why everybody thinks it's such a big deal that you're there. And it's something that I don't think we've still completely gotten used to. Now we expect it a little more, but you still don't look at yourself any differently. It's just how people treat you that makes it that way. So it is an adjustment for sure. Definitely. I mean, take any of our lives. It's no different for you than it would be for us, where all of a sudden, things change overnight like that, and you have to deal with it. And you start to understand what actual famous people deal with all the time. And it's to a much lesser degree for us, but you understand it. And then it makes more sense why they handle the media the way they do, or why they need time away from everything, and why they feel like they can't go out in public. And it's never going to be like that for us. But even to that much lesser degree, it takes a lot of adjustment. And that it still was the same a year down the road, where you feel like it shouldn't be that big a deal that we're here, but you understand that it is. And then you have to handle it that way for the good of the people there too. Like, if it's a big deal to meet you, then you want people to have a good experience with it. And I think that was something Harmon Killebrew said that I still remember, that, if somebody gets a little bit of your time, you should always make it worth it if it matters to them. And I think we all took that to heart.
No, I think that's a great point, and I do understand it too, because I've been to Crooked Pint with Topher before. I know it's our responsibility to come up with questions, but you made it pretty easy for us. Dave has one eventually, and I'll let him go next. But you said you should tell us the story of meeting Jack Nicklaus. The floor is yours, man. Do it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite ones, just because Jack is such a larger than life guy. I mean, but not literally. Like, he's a very small person. We didn't expect that. Like, he's almost a half a head shorter than the rest of us. So getting to meet him after everybody had spoken, yeah, I said the gesture there too. Yeah, that didn't mean to hit home there, Brian. So after everybody had spoken, we'd actually gotten to shake hands with Jack in the middle of the event. We thought that was kind of going to be it, which was cool enough for us. And one of his people came over after everybody's done and said, "You guys have a few minutes to spend with Jack?" And we, checked our watches, and we were able to squeeze that in. So
that's not a tough decision, is it?
Yeah. So we took a bunch of pictures with him, told some stories. He really wanted to see the medals, because he said he never had a chance to win one of those, and he really wished he could. But then he says, "Let me show you my gold medal." And he reaches in his pocket, and he pulls out a wad of hundreds about as thick as your fist. And it's got a gold money clip around it. So he takes the money clip off, and he holds it up, and he says, "I won this in a long drive competition in 1964. And it was something like 344 yards, somewhere in there. It was like an astronomical number, not just for that era, but for Jack, who wasn't necessarily known as a big hitter. But that just shows you he could do it. Kind of like Greg Maddux could throw in the mid-90s if he wanted to, but that wasn't how he pitched. That wasn't how Jack hit the ball. So, sharing that little thing with us about, he's carried this thing around. He's had it refurbished. He's had it for like 50 years, but he still carries that thing around because it matters to him. It's a memento. So just to share that with us while we're, showing him, our medals, it was like he's letting you into his, world. And that's something we've experienced a lot with athletes too, is they treat you like you're on the same plane. Going to visit when we did the puck drop at the XL, getting to visit with Parisi and Suter and Zucker and Koivu, and having them geeked up to meet you the same way you are to meet them. And, instead of just taking pictures with fans, like, they're really interested in hanging out with you and hearing about your sport and trading stories and stuff. So feeling like you have that level playing where these guys will actually relax and let you see them more of, as humans than athletes that are in the same cookie cutter interviews that they get all the time. To be allowed into that world and get to speak with them on that level is probably the coolest part of all the things that we get to do, just because you see that they're just, as cliche as it is, they're just the same as you. They're just people. They just don't get to let their guard down that much.
Dave, go ahead.
I after all this conversation, the first thing that came to my mind is the first shift back at the liquor store when somebody came in and kind of gave you the, oh yeah, you're just one of the hired help moments, and how actually surreal that had to be, or maybe even normalizing when they said, yeah, okay, I don't want this size, buddy, get me something different. And you're like, wait a minute, I just got back from Jack Nicholson's place.
Who was the first one to call you, hey, you're Tommy's kid, aren't you? Take us through that moment instead.
Oh, yeah. No, that happens still, like, all the time. And I had probably a year and a half where I really didn't spend any time at the shop at all. With everything else I've been doing, traveling, working for USA Curling and speaking and everything, there wasn't much time for that. So the shop, thankfully, people were still drinking while I wasn't there. That hasn't stopped at any point. But yeah, when I first got back, I was just working a couple shifts just to help out when I had time, and the local energy and the congratulations and people wanting to share it. It was really cool to be able to share that with Duluth, to a smaller degree, just like on a regular basis, where people could come in and they could say hi and they could, congratulate you on the accomplishment, and they take their bottle and they go home. I mean, it was kind of cool. It felt like a little bit of normalcy, but at the same time, it's kind of strange when you're working, you're trying to, do your job, and it's an influx of people that may or may not know who you are.
Right.
But they're still giving you the pat on the back the whole time. And normally when that's the case, if you need a little break from it, then you can just go home, or you can, go away, not go out in public. But when you're standing around in the shop for 6-7 hours, you don't really get a break from it. So that was a lot to handle too, just because you don't get a choice in the matter. But Duluthians are so cool about that. Like, just they just want to share in what you did so much, because we're so proud of our community here. I think Minnesota's that way too, just in general, but Duluth more than any place I've ever been since. They want everybody to be celebrated when they do something like that. They don't want to idolize you as much as they just want to be a part of it because they feel like they are. So being able to share that with the community in any way, let alone having them just come into the shop and pick up a bottle is really cool. And even to this day, now that I'm helping out a little bit with COVID going on and with things slowing down work-wise for me, I still probably get a person or two a day that I don't know that comes in and says congratulations or something like that. Even with the incognito beard quarantine style going.
No, you've got a good look there. You've got the COVID flow on the beard pretty good.
I got a lot of flow. I haven't had a haircut in a long time here. It's tough to maintain this thing. And when the hair gets thinner but gets longer, it's tough to make it look good. So that's
look at what it's done. Look at what it's done to Dave. He's gone from 4 hairs to 8. It's out of control.
Preach, brother, preach.
Yeah, I was gonna say I barely recognized him now with all that shag going from the quarantine. This beard actually was a lot longer before too, but it was getting out of control. And then trying to wear a mask if you're helping out at the shop, and you got a big, huge beard underneath it, it's itchy as all hell. So I had to at least trim it up to the point that it wasn't that uncomfortable. But yeah.
So, Ty, I don't know how familiar you are with the show's format, but in the beginning, we always do something that has nothing to do with on-the-field sports anyway. So we were prepared for a pandemic before it hit. Our opening topic today was if fans are allowed into one game and one game only, sport by sport, professionally. We did baseball, football, basketball, hockey. Where are you going? Who's playing? I'll pose it to you.
All right, so this could be any hypothetical game for
yes, but using this year's roster. So you can't go 27 Yankees at Target Field, that kind of deal.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, man. I mean, if it came to it, I think Game 7, ALCS, Twins Yankees at Target Field. That would be it, because that's like our exercising the demon moment.
Yeah, boy, that's hard to argue with.
Yeah, just as a Minnesota sports fan, it's hard to say anything different. I mean, you could say a Cup Finals game or a World Series game or whatever, but I think just with the way our psyche works as Minnesota sports fans, I think it would mean more to Minnesota as a whole if the Twins were to vanquish the Yankees than it would the Vikings were to beat the Packers.
Well, I'm glad that you on the fact that we're assuming in your scenario the Twins win, because I'm about everything you lined up. But the Minnesota psyche, I'm going, wait a minute. Do I want to be at Game 7 at home when the Yankees get us again?
Well,
Dave and I,
that's the point, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to cry again. I've been there, done that.
Yeah, but like if you look at Game 7 of the 2004 ALCS, Red Sox Yankees, I'm sure there wasn't a Boston fan in that stadium that actually really believed they were going to win.
Right.
But that's what makes that cathartic moment so amazing, is when you don't expect it, when it always goes the other way. The one time it doesn't makes you feel completely different about every game you watch after that. So if it was going to happen, if there was a chance that it was going to happen, I would want to be there for that. Still fully expecting the other shoe to drop, but hoping against hope that this would finally be the time that they got through those guys. And then you got to be there for it.
I love that answer, but at the same time, Viking fans are going, wait a minute, let's take that psychology and apply it to us. When's our one time that it goes differently, right?
Well, that's what it felt like with the Minneapolis Miracle.
Right.
And that was a sore moment for us, too, because if you remember the NFC Championship game against Philly, okay, I mean, nobody wants to remember it, but it was like 4 days before we left for Japan to train before the Olympics. And the Vikings drove down the field. Kyle Rudolph scored a touchdown, first drive. And we're going crazy, like this is it. We
Philly
got all
goes
the
3-0.
But do you remember what happened after they scored the touchdown? Not the 38 points, but the celebration after they scored the touchdown. They rolled the football in the end zone and had guys pretend to sweep it like it was a curling stick.
That's right.
So now we're thinking, okay, this is the greatest mojo ever for us going to the Olympics too, is not only are the Vikings going to go to the Super Bowl in Minneapolis, but they're doing a curling celebration on their first score in Philly. And then we know what happened after that. So then all of a sudden you don't feel so good about that mojo anymore.
Right. Is that why your gold medal squad started so slow? Was that on the brain still? Because you didn't start well that Olympics. People forget that.
I would love to be able to blame the Vikings for that. If we could figure out what the hell
fits,
happened.
Bro, it fits.
Yeah. That was kind of the status quo for us, though, too. Like we would start slow in every world competition. The 3 worlds that we played in before the Olympics, we started 2 and 3 in each of them and advanced to the playoffs in all of them. So for whatever reason, that's just kind of how we rolled. So if anything, the start in Pyeongchang put us in a familiar position. So there's something to be said for being through the fire and coming through it and knowing you're capable of doing something like what we did, just not quite to the degree that we finished that one off.
So Tyler, we were talking earlier about the Wild, and if you had an opportunity to go to one Wild game, the first game back from COVID, who are they playing? Topher said he'd want to see them play the Blues, and I'm like, I don't know if that's the game I'd want to see first. Going to a Wild game, big hockey guy. What team are they playing?
Wait a minute. Tell them what I said. I brought the Wild to Vegas because for me the hockey game is fun, but I'm doing a whole lot else. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I'm probably not spending much time at the game if I'm in Vegas, though. That's tough. They talk about that all the time, like when they did Continental Cup for curling in Vegas. I'd go out for it if I wasn't competing, I'd be at the games for like 2 hours, and they were going for 3 days. And so you're not out there to watch curling when you're in Vegas. That's not my goal, at least. But if the Wild are playing one team, I'd probably choose Winnipeg, just because they seem to have the most bad blood with that team consistently. I was shocked when they announced the outdoor game that they weren't playing Winnipeg. I thought that was like made for TV. Perfect.
Agreed.
Yeah, there isn't near as much a rivalry with St. Louis. It doesn't fit as much, but that I think if you're looking for a game that could be exciting, it's probably going to be really physical. If you're not saying it's going to be playoffs or not, if it's just a random game, then Winnipeg is the team I'd want them to play. Yeah.
All right, I can appreciate that, and Dave is nodding in agreement. Dave, I think, feels validated by that whole thing. He feels
Yes,
pretty good.
Dave feels validated by that. I'll just say
Yes,
it.
neither of us squashed it. We just didn't have the same idea, but that makes for a better show when somebody differs a little bit. Speaking of differing, we don't differ in the sense that we all want baseball to start, and it's been quite the topic this week. It's getting closer. This is open forum. Ty, you can go first if you want, but there were two debates really this week: the players versus owners, and can we get this started? And then universal DH, love it or hate it. Let's go, guys. 15 minutes of fun debate on this.
I mean, if you're going to start with the DH, I think that we're long overdue for that. I've never been a fan of pitchers hitting. I've definitely never been a fan of the two leagues being different because,
See,
again,
this is great because I don't have to speak because Tyler's covering my whole stance. I don't care which you pick, just make it universal. Go ahead, Ty.
Yeah, and there's if you're talking like you want to have pitchers in the game because it changes the strategy of it. Managers have to be smarter about their moves and when they're going to take somebody out or a pinch hitter or anything like that. It's still those particular situations are a lot fewer than a guy coming up to the plate that has almost zero chance of succeeding in what he's attempting to do. I mean, you could compare it to you're not going to have your kicker play quarterback at any point, right? So why would you have an athlete who's not supposed to be proficient at what they're doing out there, making a fool of themselves for the most part? And there are some pitchers that can hit a little bit, but the DH just makes it a more exciting game and allows for the most fun part of baseball for most people. Now, I love pitchers duels, but most people want to see an 11-10 game. So if you got the big Nelson Cruz type guy out there that can hit 40 homers and then go sit on his butt the rest of the time, that's what people want to see. But like you said, too, I mean, to not have the two leagues have the same rules is totally asinine. And I think the DH is necessary in today's game. I think it makes for a more exciting game. I think it makes for less embarrassing moments and less injuries for pitchers. It's safer for the game. It's hard for me to make an argument for having pitchers hit, to be honest.
That's okay. I think that's why we have Topher here because he is the NL, I guess, favorite, if you will.
Hey,
I
I'm
love
going to
the
go to bat
strategy.
for Topher on this.
Well, I love the strategy of the National League. I totally get it. The double switch, the when do you pull them, when do you not pull them. I think managing in the National League is harder. American League managers can hate me for this all they want, but that's why I take the fence rider. This is why I can't be in politics because I don't go staunch any direction. I don't care what you do, just do it universally. But I would prefer another 500 home run guy, another 40-year-old offensive firepower versus his career's done because he can't play left field anymore.
Yeah, I mean, would you rather see a guy like Jim Thome and have his career extended?
But here's the question. I agree with you, but here's the question for Topher specifically, because I think he would rather see Bartolo Colon hit another home run than Jim Thome.
He's going to be waiting for a while then. Ask Bartolo when he thinks his next homer is coming. One of my favorite moments in baseball history, though, by the way.
No question. Topher, go ahead. You've been biting your tongue to the point of blood.
No, I love having the pitchers hit. I think it's a fantastic part of the game. I think it's National League baseball is more baseball purist, and I also like having the two different rules. I mean, if we have to do it, it's fine. I think it's always fun when they get to the World Series to see how teams are going to manage that, whether it's the National League team trying to figure out who's going to be the DH in American League team, and then having American
Why is that
League
hard
team
to figure out who's going to DH? Oh, I got another guy who's pretty good with the bat. Let's put him in. That's tough.
It's fine. You can jump in some other time. It's so much more interesting to have those different storylines and things figured out. Why just allow some guy to prolong his career just because he can maybe hit a ball a long ways once in a while? And it's fun. Jim Thome's a great story. It's great. They can play in the American League all they want. But I guess for me, I think I always enjoy having that disparity. It's going to be sad. I think that I understand the eventuality that there probably is going to be a DH, and I think it's going to be a sad day for baseball when that does happen. Dave, back me up here.
Oh yeah,
go ahead, Dave.
I'll back you up on this. I think that having the National League unique from the American League is awesome. I think it makes two distinct styles, and when they play in the World Series, it makes for a fascinating comparison. That being said, maybe we don't have interleague baseball to make it even more unique, because then when the Dodgers come to town and Clayton Kershaw is up, or when the Twins go and they have to have Berrios hit against Clayton Kershaw, it makes for a different game. And then when the Dodgers come to Minnesota, I hope you see what I'm doing here, Toph. I've got World Series next year going on. All of a sudden, the Dodgers with their 2 shortstops, now all of a sudden they got a DH and they're a better team as well. I think it's good to keep them separate. Although I agree, I think the universal DH is coming and Harold Baines is going to get in the Hall of Fame again.
So I don't think it's interesting to see guys doing what they're not good at. There's nothing interesting to me to see Berrios strike out against Kershaw. That makes no difference to me. Like, that's where you're basically just hoping the guy makes contact and you go on to the next at bat. And the whole point of professional sports is for guys they're the best in the world at what they do. Okay. And we're putting players in a position that they're not going to succeed like 95% of the time. And it's basically just 8 batters. And okay, now the pitcher's up and he's going to bunt the guy over with 1 out and get him in scoring position. And there's nothing interesting about that to me. And I don't think that the pitchers want to hit for the most part either. So, but it's very interesting to me to see a 40-year-old guy come up there in the last legs of his career and try to come up with one more big moment in a big spot. Like, he could succeed. He's still in the game because he has that opportunity. And Jim Thome trying to hit his 600th home run is a hell of a lot more exciting than Jose Berrios waving at a Clayton Kershaw curveball.
No, that's exactly right. I agree with Topher's take that it's fun to see the pitchers hit. If they hit, they only hit if they're leading off an inning or if there's 2 outs. Otherwise, they bunt all the time. If we want that, let Nick Punto bat 9 times in the American League. You got the same thing.
I do think that the 3-2 game, pitcher comes up, they pinch hit Jim Thome and he hits a home run is almost more valuable than the 1-for-4 with 2 strikeouts, a walk, and maybe we get a shot at the 1 home run. The DH, they don't bring DHs in that hit 320. You're not going to see Bonds in his prime at DH. You're going to see, you see some of the older guys, like you said, that are extending their career, so they're not usually in the prime of their career either. So give me 2 leads.
But they're way out. It's still 10 times better than a pitcher hitting is the point.
Yeah, but in that 3-2 game, the pitcher moves them along. Your strategy's different.
Oh my God! Only if he does it correctly. But here's the other point. Your guy is Max Scherzer. Topher's guy is Jacob deGrom. If they're cruising, but it's 1-1 in the 7th, and you're going, dang, I need a run here. Now you got to lift this ace to get a hitter up there. If they were in the American League, they should have 3,000 more innings pitched.
Yeah,
and I like
that's and Brian's argument there is my argument for exactly why you need the DH, because you shouldn't have to talk about the strategy of pulling the ace. I want to see the ace go the distance. I don't want to see him limp up there, bunt, and then go back in the dugout. Okay,
and not run the ball out. You more. I 100% agree with that. And as soon as baseball decides that starting pitchers go longer than 5 innings, call me, because I would love to see every pitcher in that 8th, 9th inning making big pitches. But Jake Odorizzi it ain't gonna matter if he's
right. But if you're comparing wholeheartedly Jake Odorizzi and Jacob deGrom, you've got a problem with your Jakes.
Yeah, if Jake Odorizzi is getting through 5 innings, period, then it's a shock. If he can get a 3rd strike on anybody, then maybe he'd be able to get through 7 or 8. But watching him tightrope through 5 innings against the Yankees or Red Sox is actually one of the most interesting things in any Twins game.
Right.
How the hell is he going to get the 6 innings this time?
Right, but here's the coin flip. Maybe he's facing a pitcher every 9th batter. Maybe he has an easier time. That's the debate.
Okay, so that's true too, right? 100 pitches instead of 110.
All right, so we've left about 5 minutes for players versus owners debate. Lots of sides to this one on Twitter this week. I don't care who wins the battle. Let's just find a way to play, because I understand both. What do you guys got?
I think Blake Snell needs to not go into PR at any time, because he's not helping the players at all by him going out there and saying what he's saying, even if there might be some validity to him, having some legitimate health concerns and not wanting to go out there for essentially what could be, an 1/8 or a 1/10 of what his contractually signed to play for. and whether or not it's worth it to him to take those risks. But the way he's going about it's terrible, and it's only making everybody get galvanized more around the owners, who the owners got in front of this by saying, hey, we've got a plan to get baseball back. So then right away saying that, boom, you get public on your side because everybody wants baseball back, right?
Oh, the owners have done a great job of having people hate everybody but them. Go ahead.
Well, exactly. So they get the public interest behind them saying, hey, we've got this plan to get baseball back. We just have to get these players to agree to it. And the players are like, whoa, it sounds like you're inching closer to trying to get a salary cap into baseball. And we've got these big CBA negotiations coming up in a year. And if we start giving a little bit more than this, this could be really ugly in trying to protect the players' rights as well. It's tough. It's a tough spot they put the players in.
No, they really did, because it's easy to say, billionaires versus millionaires. Nobody loses. But who hasn't taken a pay cut in some way during this? The players should, in some ways, accept that. But again, what does the contract say? I go to the attorney again. They signed for this much. They didn't play a full season, but you don't play a full season when you get hurt either. You still get your money. How do you respond to that?
Well, that's exactly it. And obviously, we're not privy to know what the standard player contracts are for every Major League Baseball player and what they have for act of God situations where there are no games being played. But I think the players already agreed to some sort of prorated, payment where, you take 162 games, you get $7 million over that, you break it down for half of it, you get your 3.5 and move on. But it sounds like the owners are trying to switch things up with the revenue, and it could be a lot different. And there's a lot more ambiguity as to what the players will be really getting out of it. It's difficult to say. I think there's a lot of work still to be done to try to protect everyone. Obviously, everyone wants baseball back. I think that's the key. But we want to do it safe, and the players need to protect their interests in the long run as well,
right.
in my opinion.
And the owners are enduring almost no risk. So for the players to take a pay cut to put themselves on the line while the owners sit back and cut their money doesn't look good either.
I think you're absolutely right there. I mean, the owners, obviously, getting fans in the stands would create more money for them, but that TV deals are pretty nice too. When you start getting that money rolling in for even just getting games being played is a big deal for the owners. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but right. I think it's somewhere in between where they are right now.
So two of you have said nothing. That scares me. Go ahead.
I think it's unfortunate that something that's supposed to bring joy to people's lives is now a labor dispute, and that it's really, again, much more unfortunate that it mirrors what's happening with our government and the stimulus bills. That whoever gets something out there first, whether it's Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter what side you're on, whoever gets something out there first and says, we have something on the table that will pay people immediately, then don't look at the rest of the print that's in there when they're trying to, shoehorn everything else through. That's the same stance that the owners are able to take now by saying, we have a plan to put baseball back on fields immediately. We just got to do it. And now they're putting it on the players to have to agree, or the players look greedy, or, they're the bad guys, just because, like you said, the owners got out in front. And that's just the way our world works, unfortunately, with things that really shouldn't be that important, when it should be a time when they should just get together and say, what do we need to do together to make this work? That's not the way it operates. And if I was a player under these circumstances, obviously I'd be furious about the labor dispute side of it. But if you're just throwing that out and you're talking about the safety of going out and playing baseball games again, you got to make that decision on an individual basis based on what the plan is. There's no right or wrong in that. There's no saying, like, okay, if it's X amount of money, I'm going back out there. I don't think that's, that shouldn't be as important, but they have to take their families into account. It's not just them. It's about what it's worth to these guys that are making 9 figures, 8 figures, to go out and play one season of baseball when it could be a life-threatening thing. And, are they going to take every precaution necessary? Is it a very, very small risk for these guys? Most likely, based on any scenario that's been put out there. But it doesn't mean that it's foolproof. It doesn't mean that nothing's going to happen. If like we talked about with curling, the risk would be a lot higher. But even if I knew that it's a very slim chance that something bad could happen health-wise for me and then could happen with my family, then yeah, I'm going to think long and hard about that. So there's just so many factors that come into play with this. Normally I like to take a stand, black or white, on the labor side of it, at least, or something like this, but that's just not the case. There's so many other things that are involved in this that it's hard to say this is right and this is wrong. And the owners, again, in a masterstroke, got to get out in front and be the ones that are saying, we're ready to play baseball. Let's do this, and put it on the players' heads. And that's on the owners for wanting to do that, but it's on the players too for not coming together in the first place and at least making a parent say, we're trying to get this thing done too. We're trying to come up with a plan that makes this work for both sides and get us out in the field so everybody can watch us play ball and give everybody a break on a daily basis again.
Tyler, that's a great answer, and I really like the comfortable polls you have going. I got to get better at being comfortable as I do this show.
This is
Dave,
quarantine, man. This is where
exactly. COVID life, courtesy of Tyler George. Dave, eerily quiet. Give you the last word. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Jen Walters hit on something earlier when she said, the difference between us playing today and playing, in 6 months and doing it right, there's probably not a lot of difference. It might even be better. But, if and this is the Blake Snell comment, I think, more than anything, because we really haven't heard it from a lot of people.
Well, let's face it, Blake Snell is right. His delivery is just so wrong. Go ahead.
Well, it's tough to say, okay, this is super dangerous, I don't want to do it. However, if you make sure I get paid, I'm there. That's such a tough argument to make. I mean, I understand completely saying it ain't worth it. But to say it ain't worth it unless you pay me a little more, that's a tough argument to make.
Well, here's one thing we can't argue with. A, our time is up. And B, Dave and Topher, I don't know if you guys realize this, but this was one of our best shows, and probably because we talked the least. Jen Walter was fantastic. Tyler George was fantastic.
Yep.
This was a lot of fun. Ty, thanks for turning what we thought would be 20 to 30 minutes into an hour plus. We loved it, man. Come back whenever.
No, happy to, man. It's good to get the brain a little sports exercise again, too. So anytime you want me on, you let me know. Happy to talk sports and have a little fun with you guys. And that invite for the bar is open. I showed you the bar basement, didn't I?
You did, absolutely. Speaking of bar, though, one more time for the Liqueur for House of Hearts. We want to get that link. We want to get people aware.
Yes, the gold medal edition bottle of Jeppson's Malort Liqueur, which will be on the Liquor Barn's website to purchase, will ship to Minnesota and a lot of other surrounding states, too. If you live in a state somehow coming across this podcast with us jokers and you want to order up a bottle and they don't ship to your state, we'll figure out a way to get it there somehow. But, yeah, thank you guys for having me on and letting me get the word out about the cause, too. Hopefully we can help some kids out in this time of need, too.
Well, absolutely. The mystery you left to the flavor. I got to say, I'm going to get one now. I don't know how it'll go down, but I got to try it.
I can virtually guarantee that we could try it out in the bar and my bar, sorry. And I'll sign the bottle for you. We'll get the other guys to do it and have a nice little piece for the mantle. And any other locals that want that too, that's always on the table.
Sold. Fresh kicks on my mantle. Hard to go wrong. Topher, are you in too? Dave, I know it's a tougher sell for you. Topher, are you in?
Absolutely, I'm in. It sounds fantastic. Sounds like a nice piece to put on the mantle next to those fresh kicks.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good rest of your weekend. Hit like, hit subscribe, find the link, buy the liqueur. Have a good weekend. Thanks, gentlemen. This is the Northland Sports Page. We're out of here.
Yeah.